Thank you, Chair, and to both of our witnesses here today. Michael, I just want to touch on a point that you've made here and also mention you helped co-contribute, you helped to co-write an article that pointed out in real terms what your words today, the third longest lead time in the world, actually means. It means this, according to you: the collapse in the number and value of projects in Natural Resources Canada's major projects inventory tells a story. At its peak in 2015, it held $711 billion in major projects. By 2023, it had dropped to $572 billion. That's in real dollars. If Canada had retained 2015 levels of planned investment and kept pace with inflation, the figure today would be $886 billion. And shockingly, since this Prime Minister, the current one, has taken office, already $63 billion of investment has fled Canada. That's for all kinds of reasons, but not the least of which we would suggest is anti-development, anti-private sector policies and laws. Do you have some comments on specifically measures or fiscal tools that must be improved in order to bring clarity, certainty, predictability, and fairness to private sector proponents to achieve food, energy, and critical mineral security, as you've rightly argued?
Yeah, thank you for the questions and for the reference to the paper that was written quite some time ago. I'm glad people read these things. Sometimes you never know, but I think generally we're talking about what I referred to in my opening comments around lost market share. That's really what this translates into, and we've got to question the competitiveness of our investment environment in Canada and whether that's stimulating the investment dollars needed to unlock the projects that allow us to have more throughput and output and compete more effectively on the global stage. I think broadly speaking, we've got a time-bound and limited opportunity to really get this right. We have to do a deep dive, which, forgive the term, but from soup to nuts, looks at all of the various measures from tax policy through to regulatory policy, right through to what we're doing on climate, and challenges the competitiveness of our investment environment here in Canada. But looking towards solutions, which is where I think we're at, I don't think there's an argument anymore that our regulatory processes need to be improved. We must do better. I think that's broadly accepted by Canadians, the private sector, and in all levels of government. So the questions are, well, where do we go to? Like, what can we do from here? There's some very practical things I would say need to be in the window for consideration, particularly on the regulatory side. Thresholds under the project designation regulations. I hear from all different sectors of the economy that those thresholds need to be increased so that we can start to effectively move towards a principle of one project, one assessment, but not only that, go further to one decision. And that may sound like a very simplistic thing, but raising the thresholds and moving in this types of direction really does start to identify clear lanes for provincial and federal governments in terms of their jurisdiction, which is the type of clarity that businesses need on the regulatory side. So that's one area that I think is open for analysis and debate for what we can do to start moving projects faster and in tune with the moment. But the more substantive stuff is going to be on a sectoral basis, project by project basis, where we're looking at that full suite of incentives, of tax policies, of everything that's required to unlock dollars, and asking ourselves, where do we stand vis-a-vis our global competitors, and what can we be doing better?
I don't want to put words in your mouth, so would it be fair to say that it is your organization's view that the current layers of regulatory and fiscal policy and uncompetitive taxes and legislation, for example, like C-59, and in case you have any comments on those, go ahead, but that those sorts of legislations, like the Unconstitutional Impact Assessment Act, that to this moment has not been fixed, are those laws and policies barriers to development? Do they deter investment from Canada?
On a net sum basis, there's a lot of complexity and density that I know discourages investment. Our members are obliged to their shareholders to be able to describe where this capital is going to go and how it's going to translate into a return on investment. And so we have done a lot of new regulatory interventions over the last several years that have created that kind of dense landscape that makes it difficult to kind of get to final investment decision. You've probably heard the term pancaking before, and we're working through that now. So our hope is that we're looking at this moment where we really need to unlock different pools of capital in order to invest and become more competitive on the global stage, that will start to unravel a lot of this and cut through and make Canada a successful country.
Mr. Fleming, would you remind everybody when the court made its decision including Métis and Inuit people in Section 35 rights? Do you have any comments on whether or not the government is actually fully executing its duty to consult with Métis people? And also, if you have any comments on whether or not capacity building funding has actually flown, because that's something Conservatives have supported over numerous iterations. But I've been hearing that although the government has promised it, it's not actually getting to local communities.
Minister?
Yes, thank you very much for that question, Shannon. That is quite a big and loaded question. There are many parts to that specific and many avenues that I could go down. I guess probably the best way to answer that question would be you are correct in the Constitution, Section 35 rights of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, but often the Métis get forgotten about, and it's more of those dollars flow more to the First Nations, I guess, entities that the government is dealing with. So the Métis end up getting lost in a battle between the feds and the provincial government. So to answer your question, I would say there has been some, but not to the extent that there should be. The Métis have not been fully included to the extent that they should be, but they have been included partially.
Thanks.
Mr. Gouleau, so you mentioned uranium, that Canada is the second largest producer. Who would be the first? Or would you know?
Our largest uranium producer. I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, so the uranium we produce, you mentioned, I forget the number, but 37%. So there's a percent of our uranium that goes to the United States. What percentage? So we ship a percentage of our production. What percent is that of their requirements? How important are we in that equation with the United States?
We're the number one supplier of uranium to the U.S.
And would you know who is the second supplier for them?
Well, there's where we started to get into the other foreign actors, your Kazakhstan's and other countries. Yeah.
So we are the safest. And,
we are. We're
more
the
stable.
The largest importer and by far an ally.
And our uranium resources in Canada. Do we? What would be the not the value, but the uranium deposits we have? Do we know how many years, or like we're stable?
Decades. Stable. Yes, we have a very significant supply of uranium.
Okay, thank you. All right. So to you again, this question: the key infrastructure projects like the Northern Road Link and the Webequie Supply Road remain stuck in the regulatory system, despite the calls for action to develop the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario. Do you believe this development failure has held Canada's mining industry back?
I think the problem is more structural, to be honest. We've got very antiquated planning processes when it comes to identifying trade-enabling infrastructure. Calls for a national trade-enabling infrastructure strategy are long overdue. David Emerson flagged this in 2015 when he reviewed the Canada Transportation Act. In 2017, it came forward again through the Barton Commission, in 2023, all premiers at the Council of the Federation underscored the need for a true trade-enabling infrastructure strategy. And so I think in the absence of having that kind of comprehensive planning process, we are missing out on some of these opportunities where limited taxpayer dollars need to be divested or invested into infrastructure assets that we know are going to produce strong economic returns. And so those aren't conversations that we're having now at a national level, and they're the types of conversations we need to be having in short order.
Maybe on the same line, has the current system hurt Canada's economic competitiveness in energy security and critical mineral potential?
In terms of the absence of trade enabling infrastructure and a concrete plan that we have a pipeline of projects that we're investing towards because they benefit the economic interests of Canadians, yes.
Canada now has the second slowest permitting times in the OECD. Has the Liberal government made the permitting process worse by creating more bureaucracy and uncertainty over this last decade instead of results?
Well, we're focused on outcomes now. That's definitely where we need to be. I provided a bit of a window in terms of where reform can occur, so that we are meeting the moment and moving with speed. We've been advocating for a long time that our regulatory approval and permitting processes are too slow in this country. We had warnings about C-69 when it came out about some of the structural challenges that it could create, and Ms. Stubbs had articulated the net effect of some of the natural resource projects and their inability to come forward. So we're at a point now where we really need to be focusing on reform. We need to be identifying the areas where things can be streamlined. We can't forget about permitting and the need to speed up our ability to permit, in addition to approving our regulatory processes. So,
yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Millett.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for Mr. Goulot. We know that the government does not want to withdraw C-69. They're really digging in their heels on that. So what do you think about Bill C-5, which should actually expedite these major projects? So on C-5, do you really believe in this? Are you a believer in Bill C-5? Do you think it would really expedite these projects?
we do believe in C5. We signaled our strong support for the direction that it's trying to head in. We appeared in front of the Senate to communicate our support for it. We think the early signals are positive. The CEO of the MPMO is a person with exceptional characteristics and qualities, very capable of taking on major assignments. I think her track record is quite strong. Some of the other parts of the machinery that they've built around it in order to ensure that they're working with the Indigenous communities in an appropriate way through the Advisory Council are very positive. And so, we do have to have faith in the process in our view, because we need something to meet the moment. At the same time, we're not in the business of seeing workarounds. That's why some of the arguments that I put forward in front of you today around where structural reforms could occur in the context of one project, one review, and one assessment really need to be taken into account, because there will be a lot of capital and projects flowing outside of the C5 structure. And that's just as important, and we need to make sure that stands on firm ground.
Do you think that if we don't change the regulations, or if we don't change the permitting process, do you believe that we're actually going to be able to become competitive if we don't actually do anything about some of the regulations or the way in which we get permits? If we don't change anything there, can we be competitive?
Make any changes that would be a serious handicap to our competitive position. In the event that we did nothing, that wouldn't resonate, I don't think, with the private sector. That wouldn't resonate with what Canadians want. Broad strokes of different political parties are all calling for reform. So we do need to meet this moment in that capacity. We've got ideas to share around where regulatory reform can occur within the construct of the impact assessment itself, without having to go through a process where we're repealing a full piece of legislation and then waiting all of that time to replace it with something which in parallel just discourages investment, or at least puts it on ice or on the sidelines when we're at a moment where we really want to see that capital flow into Canada in the near term.
Vous êtes capable de me dire
I'm curious about this. How many departments or different federal agencies generally participate in the review of one single mining project? Do you know how many are involved?
In totality, no, it would obviously range from project to project, depending on where it
et,
is across the country.
et si je vais de cette façon?
And if I proceed in this way, a total number of permits that a mining developer would have to obtain under federal jurisdiction. Could you give us that?
In a report where, there are projects that have to obtain sometimes hundreds of permits.
J'ai encore du temps? Oui.
They still have some time? Now, you've talked about price manipulation being carried out by other countries. Now, that is quite a cause for concern, because we don't have any control over that, it seems. And if we want to get market share, well, it's often a question of price, and then sometimes the mine isn't profitable. So is there a way in which we can actually control this, or are we at the mercy of this type of price manipulation?
I certainly think it's a major headwind, but in thinking through our proposal around a critical mineral reserve for Canada, there's certainly an identification of a number of tools that are available, ranging from, infrastructure funds, loan guarantees, investment tax incentives, price floors, equity positions, offtake agreements. We have to look at the totality of what's available in order to stand up these projects that are going to harvest the minerals that we need for our national security purposes. So although there's headwinds, we're very hopeful that a solution can be created.